So welcome back. We're going to do, I believe this is our last lesson on this. So this is our fifth lesson. Again, we're going to compare, this time we're going to order fractions, decimals, and percents this time. And again, we're going to order them from, typically, most times it's least to greatest, but read the directions, it may be largest to smallest or greatest to least. A little quick definition on percent. Percent basically means per 100. Notice how it has this fractional language, numerator, denominator, or it has this decimal language of hundredths place. If you're talking about hundredths place, basically what that means to do is you're dividing by 100, and we've learned a shortcut over the years that if you divide by 100, all you really got to do is move that decimal 2 places over to the left. So I can either change a percent to a fraction or a decimal. To order fractions, decimals, and percents, I think the best strategy is just to go ahead and just change everything to the decimals. Those are the numbers I'm more familiar with. So let's look at this 2/3. If I want to change this to a decimal, I have to actually divide it out. So in our math classes, a lot of times this is called the rain game. The 2 gets rained on, so we put him in the garage to cover him up. And then the 3 becomes our divisor. So right now our decimal's here, and we notice that 3 does not go into 2. So I'll go ahead and bring that decimal up. Since 3 doesn't go into 2, what we're allowed to do is go ahead and add a 0. We're not changing the value of anything. But we do know that 3 does go into 20. I believe that's going to be 6 times. 6 times 3 would be 18. We get our remainder, and again when we do this math we just ignore the decimal. 20 minus 18 would just be a 2. Since I got a remainder, what I do is add another 0, slide it into the problem, and we just do 3 to 20 again. And I need to probably lengthen that out a little bit. So 3 does go into 20 6 times, so again I put that 6 right above that 0. 6 times 3 is 18. We subtract again, we get a remainder of 2. And since I got a remainder, I got to keep on going, but this is one of those that we're recognizing that, wait a minute here, this number is just going to keep on repeating. So 3 goes in 20 6 times, and we have this. So if I have a number like this, a lot of times it's written as 0.6. Let me find a place for that. So this is the same thing as then 0.6 with like a little bar over it. That little bar kind of means it just keeps repeating that 6 over and over again. So this is the same thing as a bunch of 6s forever. So if I look at 60%, since that's a percent, if I want to change it to a decimal, all I got to do is move my decimal 2 places over. So 60% means my decimal's here, slide the decimal over twice, that gives me then 0.60. 0.65 is already a decimal, so I don't have to change that. 4/5 is a fraction, so I need to divide that out. So we use the rain game. Again, what I mean by rain, the rain comes down and lands on the 4, so we kind of put him in the garage. That's our little memory device. So the 4 goes in the garage, and we do our long division. 5 goes in the 4. That's not going to happen, is it? So we put our decimal in. We got to add a 0 to make the math work. 5 goes into 40. If I can make that longer, actually. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Remainder 0. Actually, I don't have to go any further. It stopped right there. We call this a terminating decimal. Terminating kind of means it stops. But over here, notice how this is a repeating decimal. It never stops. So if you ever see a little bar, that bar just means that number just keeps going on and on forever. So it looks like I have to look at my numbers here, and it looks like I can make things go out to 2 decimal places and kind of figure this out. So notice how this would be like 0.66. This is 0.60. 0.65, and this would be 0.8, and I can add a 0 there, and that doesn't change the value because the 8 is still in the tens place, so nothing's changed there. Now it's actually easier to compare these guys. So we can kind of see that 60 hundredths is the smallest fraction, which actually translates into that 60% there. So 60% would be our smallest. It looks like the 0.65 would be our next smallest. The 0.66, that was our 2/3. The 2/3 would go in here, and then the 80/100ths, that corresponds to the 4/5. So the 4/5 would be our largest fraction. So that's a strategy I can do to change fractions, percents, and decimals into smallest to largest. So let's look at this example. I have 125%, 1 3/4, 1.25 at the bottom over it, and 1 1/5. Again, when we're working with fractions, decimals, and percents, let's just change everything to decimals. So to change a percent to a decimal, our shortcut is really just move the decimal 2 places to the left. So it's going to change this to 1.25. 1 3/4, we know that that's going to be, I may have this division if I want to, it's going to be 1 and something. What I really just need to do is just change the 3/4 to decimal. And we learned that that's going to be 1.75 if I do the division on that one. Again, you can do the rain game on that. We then have this 1.25. That also means there's another 5 here. 1 1/5, I'm not sure what 1/5 is, so I have to do the rain game on that one. 5 goes into 1, not going to happen. Put our decimal in the problem at a 0. So now I can actually do 5 into 10, and 5 does go into 10 twice, and 2 times 5 is 10. My remainder is 0, so this is going to be 2/10. So to get a clear picture of this, it's probably a good idea, since this one goes out to 3 places and beyond, let's just make everything else go out to 3 places. So I have then 1.250, 1.750, 1.255, and then 0.200. So I can now use these as my strategy to put them in the smallest to largest. Since they're all now to the thousandths place, I can read that as 1 and 250 thousandths, 1 and 750 thousandths, 1 and 255 thousandths, and also I have just 200 thousandths. So it looks, and also I had that 1 there going on, so I'm sorry, messed up there. I have 1 and 1/5, so that should be 1.2. So it's going to be 1 and 200 thousandths. Okay. So yeah, I've got to bring that 1 in the problem there that I didn't include in my division problem. So it looks like the 1 and 200ths would be the smallest, so that tells me that then the, I'll just use the blue marker here, 1 and 1/5 is my smallest fraction. Looks like the 250 is the next one, so that means 125% was my next smallest value. And then it looks like this 1.25 with that bar over it is the next one. So that was my next number in order. And then that 1 3/4 was my largest number altogether. So that would now be from smallest to largest. So a lot of things going on there. See if you can put that to use. And stay tuned for our next lesson.